We all have our own hero's journey. We want to inspire you to live yours. That's my mission and why I started this show. Carey Pena Reports. Hi, everyone. I'm Carey Pena, and thank you so much for tuning in to the podcast, Carey Pena Reports. I have my friend back in the studio, Brandon Lee. B. Lee, as I like to call you.
B. Lee.
How's it going, bud?
It's going so good. Can I just say, if you're watching this, you'll see how cool the space is. If you're listening, what you have built is so incredible.
Thank you,
It's
babe.
so incredible. These studios are so badass.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. It's been a really interesting few months. We have been working a lot through COVID because we do have these production facilities based here in Phoenix. And for those who are listening and don't see us on camera, Brandon graciously talked about the facilities. So we have built out digital TV studios. We're creating a lot of shows. We're helping out a variety of charities bring their shows virtual because they can't do the in-person. And we have a great podcast facility led by Nick Tantillo. Not on the mic, but he's on the beat. So Brandon, for those of you who don't know, is a well-known news anchor. And the last time we talked, he was heading to LA, taking a break and writing a book and publishing a book. And his book is all about his addiction and recovery, and it's called Mascara Boy. And I wanted to have you in today for so many reasons. You're back now in Phoenix, and you're anchoring at CBS 5 and 3 TV, and everything's going really well in regards to your news anchoring.
100%. You know, people always ask, I think the people who follow me on social media, they all know why I left in the first place, right? I left to go write that book. There was no way that you can go and really dig that deep into your soul and into your past. And I have a dark past, you know, and in order for you to really tap into that and dig into it, I could not have done the daily grind of news and then found that time to write a book. You know, I wasn't writing about something that didn't involve me. So I wasn't writing about like World War II or conflict that's happening in the Middle East or anything.
Yeah.
This was my personal story.
Yes.
And for that, you really have to like find that alone time, meditate, a lot of one-on-one therapy sessions. And so, yeah, I went to Venice Beach and I sat there on the beach and wrote that book. And, you know, I self-published that book.
I know.
You know, and to see, a lot of people said self-publishing books never will succeed. And I didn't believe that. I always believe that if you're authentic and you're telling your story, if it's a story that people want to hear, they'll find it.
Yes.
Like, you don't need to go and sign with a big publisher for them to tell you if a book or if your story's good enough or not.
And your story really resonated. And one of the things we're going to be talking about today is that it's National Recovery Month. I have a lot of concerns. I've been doing a ton of reporting on this subject about the pandemic and people who are trying to stay sober, who've walked through traumatic experiences in their lives. And this is really bringing a lot of ugly stuff up. So I thought you were the perfect person to come in today to talk about that. But first, if you would just, I don't want to try to like break your whole book down into a couple of sentences. But for folks who don't know your story, you suffered a lot of trauma, sexual abuse when you were younger, and you fell into such a deep addiction to the point where I want to tell the audience that Brandon and I were very good friends. We've been communicating throughout the writing process, and you sent me some advanced chapters. And even as well as I know you messaged me and said, Care, before you read this, watch out, like really brace yourself for what you're about to read.
Yeah, because even though I'd always consider myself to be an open book about my past, there are some things that I had kept in the closet. Like there were some skeletons before I wrote that book that even to people like you, some of the closest people in my life, some of the closest partnerships, that I didn't tell you everything, and I didn't tell some people in my life everything. And when I decided to make that commitment to write the book, and I said, if you're going to do this, like you're going to open up the closet and you're going to pull out every hidden bone in that closet for the world to see. And that is truly what set me free. And then when I came back, the one comment that I get from people all the time who watched me on TV before I left, and then they watch me on TV now that I'm back, the one common thread is, you look so happy. Like you just seem like your smile's different. Like you're just shining so differently now. And the only thing that's different is I'm not hiding anything anymore.
You got it all
I
out.
got all that darkness out there. And what I thought people would judge me by, some of the darkest moments of the book that I almost deleted and removed before it published, nobody cares about those things. So the life lesson there was, what we think people will care most about, sometimes people won't even care at all. And those things that we don't share are actually holding us back from becoming our true authentic selves and being loved by people and being able to help people. I wouldn't be able to help as many people if I held back.
Yes. And you talk about your addiction. I mean, you had a really serious...
Yeah. And one of the big things reasons behind why I wrote the book is I wanted to get out there on the public speaking circuit and speak at mental health summits, because what I have learned with all the reading and the education that I have taken along the way, even through therapy, is that I learned I needed to answer this one question. How did I at age 15, growing up in beautiful Orange County, California, going to Catholic school, playing international soccer, had everything from the outside looking in. How can I at 15 become a sex addict? How at age 15 can I become a cocaine addict? And one of the issues that I give AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, huge credit for giving me a life plan to get sober. But one of the issues that I had with the teachings was they always said, it doesn't matter what brought you here, so as long as you're here and you stay here. But that wasn't good enough for me, because I needed to know why at age 15 I did turn to those things.
And you were having sex with much older men.
Yeah, I was having sex with men in their 40s and 50s, and I was maybe 15.
Yeah.
And the root cause of it was I was repeatedly sexually abused as a child, both by my piano teacher and my youth soccer coach. And, was emotionally abused by my mom, and so all of those things combined, untreated. At age 15, the moment that I found some sort of an escape, some sort of numb feeling, I kept chasing it. For me, that was sex and cocaine at age 15. And that was the way I numbed that pain. And I continued to numb my pain throughout until I was about 28 years old, when eventually I hit rock bottom and I got sober. But for me, the gateway to addiction is childhood trauma. Or trauma. I hear people who don't become an alcoholic until the age of 40, because you can suffer PTSD at age 40. And if that PTSD goes untreated, you're going to find a way to numb that pain. You will, because holding on to that pain untreated is unbearable. So at age 40, you could become an alcoholic. At age 50, you could become a drug addict if that trauma is not healed.
What did it feel like to make yourself that vulnerable? And even though you like to think of yourself as an open book, still writing some of those things down, and for anyone, but you're also in the public eye. And I will tell the audience, because I know you're okay with this, you had no idea what that was going to do to the trajectory of your career in news. Not every broadcast executive wants someone who has written a book about, how they were having gay sex with older men at the age of 15 and some of the other very lurid things that were in there. Mm-hmm. And that you were a functioning addict. I guess, is that okay to say it that 100%. Way? Because you were working on the news in Los Angeles and then going and getting high all night.
Yep.
I mean, the stories that you wrote in that book were really shocking.
Yeah.
And you and I had that conversation that you were taking this step and putting this out into the public sphere, not knowing if you were going to be accepted back into the career that you had loved and frankly you're excellent at for so many years. So that was a huge risk.
Yeah, thank you. I think you described that situation perfectly, because those were all the thoughts that were going in my head. Also, one of the reasons before the book was published that I immediately freaked out the night before and deleted huge chunks out of my book for that very reason. And then I thought to myself, Brandon, some opportunities are going to close. And they did. And some of those opportunities will always be closed to me, because the people running some networks in this country are these old white men, right? It's just the truth of it. It's these old white men. Brandon has tattoos. No way. Anchors can't have tattoos. That doesn't fit our mold that we've created. But then you look at some of the reasons why. Look at local news and the ratings of local news. And I look at these same older white men who are running all these networks. And I'm like, hey, newsflash, that little cookie cutter box of that dry saltine cracker of a news anchor that used to work in the 80s and 90s and the early 2000s, guess what? That doesn't work anymore. They don't connect with the viewer. We connect with one another through our traumas and through our pain. We don't connect saying, oh, you have a nice $5 million home. So do I. Check out my ride. Check out my ride. That's not how we connect with people, right? Look at all the people who are suffering right now during this pandemic. People fighting to put food on the table. People fighting to get a paycheck every week, right? That's how we connect with people. So if I have to share some of my scars and some of my bruises, then I will in order to connect with people. The problem with a lot of people in the TV world is that they put themselves on a pedestal and they act like they have this perfect, shiny life. And then they wonder why nobody tunes into them on a nightly basis.
Why there's no audience connection.
Right. It's because the audience doesn't connect to people on yachts, doesn't connect to people tripping to Hawaii and going to Europe and living a lavish lifestyle. Just open up a part of yourself to another human being. Be brave enough to share a few of your scars and find out how many people will actually want to talk to you about their scars.
It's amazing to hear you say that, because I remember when you first came to Phoenix and they paired us up on the air. And at that time, you were not open about all of these stories.
None.
You were still very conflicted about your whole
I was
situation.
very not vulnerable. So you bring up that word vulnerability.
Yeah.
You know what my therapist said? This is, mind you, I'm on like year 6 of intense therapy. And my therapy now is even more intense because I have a lot more digging that I didn't realize that I needed to do. There's a lot of layers to peel off. I don't even know where I was going with that.
The vulnerability.
Oh, the vulnerability aspect. I used to have walls built up around me, right? With all the childhood trauma that I had, I went into survival mode as a child and carried that mentality of survival mode through adulthood. When I first went to therapy, she was like, my good God, you have so many walls built up. So to hear people describe me now as vulnerable, my therapist just like does jumping jacks. Like she wants to do backflips. She's like, the way you speak now, when you're interviewed, the way you talk, you are so vulnerable at so many parts of your life. Like compare that to where I was 6 years ago, and I had walls built up. I would allow certain people in, but not everybody.
Yeah, you were very nice, but it was clear that you had walls built up. But remember, as you and I got to know each other, and you would go back and forth from LA, and I would say, well, how is everything? How is it really? And then I think the more I started to show you that I actually cared what was going on, you started to tell me a few things along the way. But I remember specifically one time you and I got sent out to do a public appearance. This is before you felt comfortable showing your tattoos. Now, keep in mind, for folks who are listening, not watching, Brandon he's fully sleeved.
Yeah,
so
I'm
it's
covered.
Not like an easy thing to
I almost have a body wrap.
Yeah, but you would pull down it was like 120 some degrees.
We were sweltering.
Bullets.
Girl, I remember that promo shoot. I will never forget that. I think that was out in like Chandler or something. We were at some mall outdoors and I was like, Carey, I'm going to lose it. I'm going to lose it. I'm sweating. I'm dying right now because I just didn't want anybody here in Arizona seeing me with tattoos.
How does it feel?
And judging me
that Brandon of yesterday and the Brandon sitting me in front of. I can care less what
people think of me.
Correct. And I just feel that
I can care less.
And your Twitter feed reflects that. You still, you stay, I think, within the confines of you are a professional news anchor.
I hope so. I definitely speak my mind on social media.
But you're much more willing to speak your mind and show who you are. And what is your level of concern right now be for people who are walking through their own trauma? The pandemic is something
I'm so glad that you're bringing it back to this, because what I want to say is I'm hugely concerned. I am so concerned that in May, I produced a special report on addiction in a pandemic. I knew the moment those stay-at-home orders were announced, my first thought wasn't, people can't go get their hair cut. People can't go get their nails done. My goodness. My first thought was, oh my God. All the people who rely on going to recovery meetings, AA meetings, whatever, 12-step meeting you go to, I was like, there's going to be so much relapse and there's going to be so much death. And people who are not in my world thought I was an alarmist. And it's proven to be true. In one of the recent news conferences that the governor held he made it a point to say, there are more people dying from overdoses than are dying from COVID in the state of Arizona. We tell people early on in recovery, the last thing you ever want to do is isolate. The last. If you isolate, it is you are essentially signing your death certificate. Because if you're new into recovery, the worst thing you do is be alone in your own thoughts. You have to fellowship. You have to be around people. You have to show up to meetings. You take those things away. Am I surprised that there has been a huge spike of overdose deaths? Not at all. Not at all. I came very close to a relapse in May. Very. To the point that at night when I was going to bed, I wasn't having the shivers. My body was violently shaking. And this would happen around midnight, 1 a.m. And my body would uncontrollable, like I couldn't stop the shaking. I am telling you, those were like the demons in my body. And my higher power truly fighting those demons for me. Because when I laid down at night and rested, and that's when my thoughts really come alive, that I was really fascinating about relapsing and, fantasizing about and really romanticizing about it. And my body was just violently shaking. And it was because I couldn't stop thinking about using. And, I'm grateful to say that the violent shakes have stopped. But again, I have so much time in recovery that I know I can talk to my therapist but it's real. And I'm sitting there thinking God, if somebody with my experience in recovery is having this, imagine somebody with 6 months.
Was it the isolation you were feeling that was what
it was
causing
me taken out of my routine. So I'm a routine guy. I eat the same food.
And you also had a COVID scare. So
huge. It's just compounding on everything. I'm a huge routine guy. I am so military with my schedule. If you take me out of my routine, I really get thrown. But I know that about myself. So I set my days up accordingly to not fail. All of a sudden, you take away my work routine, and then you take away my gym routine. You take away my fitness routine. You're taking away all of this stuff from me. And eventually, it's going to have some sort of an impact on me. So that's been really challenging. And I know it's been challenging for so many people. And what was the second question you had asked me?
Well, you also had texted me along the way, and you said, and I'm sharing this with the audience because I know you're okay with it. I just want to preface this. And you can talk about
anything you want.
But you texted me and said that you were in a very dark place.
Yeah.
You had seen a few friends, and you've been very careful. Well, yeah. COVID.
So listen, I had been at home since March. I'd go to the studios because I was one of the few anchors they had tapped to say, hey, do you feel safe enough just to come to work and then go straight home? And I did. So I was at least being able to go to work for a few hours and then come back home. But that's all I was doing. When I was given an opportunity in July, I needed to see people. I live alone. I'm single. I don't have a boyfriend. Don't have a fiance. I don't hang out at bars, clearly, even pandemic or no pandemic. I needed to see people. My love language is touch. That's my love language. It's not, hey, Brandon, I love you. Words are nice. They don't hit me. Touch is everything for me. So if I'm not around the presence of people, you're ripping the one thing of love that I need. And so I made a decision in July. I said, okay, I'm the anomaly. There's a group of 6 of my best friends in Atlanta, Georgia. They all live in Atlanta. They have their own bubble, and they're 3 couples. So they're all around each other all the time. So I was the anomaly flying in there. And it was over 4th of July weekend. There were 7 of us, and it was on a private lake in our own lake house. And 6 of them got COVID. And how did I not get it? I didn't. But I had to, when I flew back, I had to go into quarantine for 14 days because this 6 guys I was around with ended up getting COVID. So I had to sit at home for 2 weeks, and then deal with the reason why I was in such a dark place was I was the guy who flew to Georgia and I just got all 6 of my friends sick. That was the guilt that I carried over my head. And mine ended up being negative, so it wasn't me. But yeah, that's a really dark place, I was really sick in January and February. Hospitalized sick. Do I believe I had it? I do. My gut of guts is, I'm such a healthy person. For me to be hospitalized with a 104 fever, my lungs burning, it felt like somebody was stabbing my lungs. Even my doctor looked at my chart back in February and was like, whoa, if you came in with these symptoms now, we would automatically say you had COVID. So I don't know. Do I have the antibodies? Who knows? I don't, they say the harder you're sick, the stronger your antibodies are and the longer they last in your system. So that was about 6 months ago. So I don't know.
I think that the big part that I see that is so trying for people is that there's a lack of clarity. There's a lack of clarity and preciseness about what COVID is and what it does to your body and what the long-term implications are. There's a lack of clarity about whether or not there will be a vaccine, whether it'll go away. State to state, everything's being done differently. So it's like for someone like you, where you have this routine and you have clarity that has helped you in your recovery, having that ripped out of our lives is so challenging. Can you talk to the audience, who I know will be riveted to hear, what are some of the things that have helped you climb out of that dark place? And you're not, you never think it's completely a win, right? Like you're always going to be vulnerable.
Yeah, well, how about this? I'm always going to be in therapy for the rest of my life.
But you are very diligent about therapy, and you do have resources. So can you share some of the things that have really helped you? Because I mean this from the bottom of my heart. I am so worried. And then I see the suicide numbers. I think about the parents. I have resources. So when people ask me, and, hey, how's homeschooling going for the kids? I have 2 little ones. I cannot complain. I really can't. It's not been easy, but I can't because we have laptops and I have help and I have a husband. And so I cannot complain, but my brain immediately goes to all the people who don't have those resources.
Right.
The single moms who are out there working their asses off and trying to, make ends meet, and then trying to keep their kids schooling. So for people who are listening, what do you say to them to try to keep going in a way that is healthy, to try to see through to the other side when things are very murky and gray?
So let me begin, and I don't want to scare people, but I need people to understand the level of darkness that can come over. There could be, it got so dark that I could be dead. I've seen too many people who have battled addiction and demons in the past, overcome them, and then you read the newspaper or you read the news the next day and you're like, oh my God, they're dead. The disease has taken that person. Life is unpromised. As well as I'm doing at this moment and this day, my life is not guaranteed. I'm going to do everything that I can in my life to not have you wake up the next morning and see that Brandon Lee is dead from an overdose. The only way that I can prevent that death from happening is by talking and talking and talking. Some people say, Brandon, God, maybe you speak a little too openly. Maybe you're a little too vulnerable. Like some things not everything needs to be shared, is a common saying. But for me, I don't care if I overshare. I don't care if the public looks at me and goes, ooh, why did he say that? We didn't need to know that. I'm not saying it for you. I'm saying it so I don't overdose. I'm saying it so I don't reach for crystal meth or heroin, because I was too worried about other people thinking I'm a little too open with my mouth about some of the dark things that go through my mind. So I try to be as open with as many people as I can, because that holds me accountable. So if you know I'm sober and you know I'm sober, everybody else around me knows I'm sober, it's a lot harder to go out there and use. Do I have the means to pay for a therapist? Yes, I do. Thank God. For me, does everybody have the same resources to be able to afford therapy once a week, 2-hour therapy sessions once a week? No. To those people, I say this. There are AA meetings and they are free and they are on Zoom right now. Log on. I've logged on to a few of them, even though I'm not a member of AA anymore. I still have logged on every now and then just to hear a message of hope. I talk to my therapist and I've told my friends, I've told a couple of my really good friends in my life, I don't run with a huge group of people. It's not my style. I'm friendly to people, but closeness, I keep it real close. Those people know that I've had a lot of dark thoughts, up and down. No different. It's the pandemic. It's the pandemic. It's a lot of things. There's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with people who have mental health, who suffer from mental health. There's nothing wrong. We just have to be open and willing to listen to them and not look at them like a damn scarlet letter. So I say to the Arizona viewers who've welcomed me back, who know all the darkness about me and still want to watch me. And what I hope is that tells that network executive who looks at me like a scarlet letter because I got tattoos and I was sexually abused. And I hope that motivates me. Having jobs ripped away from me because of my past. Guess what? You've now motivated me to come kick your ass. And I will do everything in my power to be number one, to prove that you can have a scarlet letter on the back that society throws on you and puts on you, and you can overcome it, own it, and stand in your truth. Because you know what? Not one person has ever said anything to my face. They'll go to my agent, say, he's not really our type, They'll say to other people, but ain't nobody ever come to me and tell me they think less of me because of my past. It's because I stand in my truth.
And I know that one of the big things that has helped to propel you forward is the deep understanding and the profound understanding that your platform that you have been given in this business has allowed you, by speaking your truth, to really help a lot of other people.
I never meant for that. My goal was never to be a role model. My goal was never to be somebody that people looked up to. Look what I was doing to myself. Is that the actions of somebody that's trying to be a role model? Smoking meth, doing heroin. It's not behavior that anybody has. I never expected this. I didn't want to die. I don't know how else to say it. I hit a point at the very end. And I remember I just broke down and I had a meth pipe in my hand. And I was in the slums of LA. I'll never forget this night. And I was just sitting in the driver's seat of my car, sitting in a vacant, rundown parking lot with a meth pipe in my hand, and just started crying and saying, all I want is a little house. All I want is a little house with a husband in a monogamous relationship and go to the grocery store on a Sunday morning. That's it. That's all I wanted. And I just broke down crying. And that was about a week later, I finally got sober from that moment. I just didn't want to die. I just didn't want to live in that darkness anymore. I had no idea where that lived. I just know that was the motivating factor, is I just didn't want to die. And that's all I told the mental health people at the hospital when I was admitted. Because after 2 overdoses within 72 hours to the same hospital, they're like, okay, you're on watch, And was shown such grace by a little nurse in that hospital, shown such grace. I mean, here comes this druggie, naked from the streets after an overdose, and might as well have looked homeless, at the time, and was shown such grace by someone who didn't need to. And that moment of grace got me to go to my first recovery meeting when I was released from the hospital. And that's when I got sober, so somebody showed me grace. So show somebody grace.
That message is so important right now, because I feel like good people, but they're just tearing each other apart and not understanding that people are suffering and struggling, and each in their own unique way. And I worry about the addiction issues that are taking hold. And I know this is not the same as your story, but the alcoholism that people, just one drink, and now they're back in the darkness. after these months of being isolated and alone.
You pick up right where you left off. It's not a slow descent.
What message do you want to leave people with?
I know the feeling of thinking you're alone. I know it. I know that moment when you think that nobody gets me. Nobody understands. If you have those thoughts, or, excuse my language, but if the word fuck it starts to come out a lot, you have to say something. You have to. Not saying something will take you down to the hospital or death. You have to share it. The moment you share it, a weight will be lifted. You're not alone. You're not alone. So look at my life. Look at the life I have today. I'm the happiest I've ever been. Sure, can I get emotional when I tap into my story at times? Yeah. Have I experienced darkness this past year? Yes. Am I alive and breathing today? Yes. You're not alone. And you're not alone in those dark thoughts. And just because you have a dark thought doesn't mean something's wrong with you. It's okay to go dark sometimes. You just have to share it with somebody without the fear of them judging you or looking at you differently. So when I say show grace so that you're welcoming people to share something with you. Don't judge others, because if you're constantly judging others, you're not making yourself open for a close friend of yours to come to you to share that darkness because they're afraid you're going to judge them. Always show grace, especially in a pandemic when people are losing their shit. Show grace. Be that person that somebody feels safe to come to and share that darkness.
I love that as the final message of this show, and I can't wait to share this out because I think this message that you're sharing today, again, continuing to be honest, even when it makes you vulnerable and even when it makes you emotional, that helps people. I know it's not what you set out to do.
No.
But as an end result, you have, and I'm so proud of you, and I love you so much.
I love you too, so much.
And just let people know, where can they find Mascara Boy is a really great book, by the way.
Thank you. And you know who? I can't say what agency right now, but they reached out to me last week. It doesn't get any bigger than this one agency, and they have 2 agents looking over the book right now. Did I ever think it could become a movie? No. Would it be cool to? Yeah, can it reach a huge audience? But yeah, you can order the book, Mascara Boy. It's on Barnes & Noble. It's on Amazon. Google Mascara Boy. It shows up on every major bookstore. Here in the Valley, they actually have it on store shelves at Barnes & Noble.
Which was so huge.
It's just nuts. Here's the little Brandon self-published book. And all of a sudden it's on the shelves at Barnes & Noble. Hugely grateful for that. Otherwise, you could tune into 3TV and CBS 5 weeknights.
Love you, Beely.
I love you too.
And thanks to all of you for listening and for watching. And you can always see all of the episodes also on our website, inspiredmedia360tv.com. Take care, everyone.